Hello everybody, welcome back for another video. Hope you're all doing well and that you're all having a great day. Just so a little topic that I saw floating around. I'm noticing a lot of things are starting to connect a lot easier in the cryptocurrency space. In 2018, we experienced a lot of situations where things didn't quite add up and the things that we were receiving in the news just didn't really make a lot of sense. But it seems that the closer, and I mean even as we slowly slide through 2019, it appears that everything is starting to make a bit more sense. So the video was actually supposed to be something else, and you'll get it as I'm starting to go through it. But it appears that it's already going in another direction, and this has only started within the last couple of weeks. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. The United States Federal Reserve could soon include a cryptocurrency market crash as one of the risks to take into account when conducting supervisory stress tests. The Fed's Board of Governors on Thursday announced amendments to a policy statement on the scenario design framework for stress testing, saying that the collapse of the Bitcoin market may be considered as one of the salient market risks. According to the document, the crypto amendment was recommended to the board by a commenter who proposed it should be seen as one of the several extraordinary shocks, such as a war with North Korea and major losses caused by trader misconduct. The board said it aims to make supervisory stress tests significantly dynamic by including salient market risks in the scenario design framework. Such risks have been included since the inception of supervisory stress tests, with recent additions being oil prices shocks and a severe recession in the euro area, among others. They said, where appropriate, the board intends to continue augmenting the scenarios with risks it considers to be salient, end quote. Supervisory stress tests of eligible firms are conducted annually by the board pursuant to the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform Act and the board's stress test rules. The Fed board also explains the reason for the test by saying, and I do quote, together, the Dodd-Frank advisory supervisory stress tests are intended to provide company management and board of directors, the public, and supervisors with forward-looking information to help gauge the potential effects of stressful conditions on the ability of these large banking organizations to absorb losses while meeting obligations to creditors and other counterparties and continuing to lend, end quote. Without going too much further, aside from the levels of risk being baseline, adverse, and severely adverse, this article may seem confusing or may not seem that interesting to a lot of people. I've noticed a lot of times I'll talk about certain things and people will go, yeah, but what's the point? So I will explain the point to you. For a while, and it's been at least since, I want to say around 2014, I'll give you at least that time frame. So a good 4.5 years, somewhere around that time, the question was constantly proposed to governments and government leaders and world leaders if cryptocurrencies were a risk to the government, if cryptocurrencies were a risk to fiat currencies, if cryptocurrencies crashing or going down to zero could have any significant effect on the crypto, or rather the traditional financial market, if Bitcoin going up in price could have any adverse effects on the traditional markets. And the answer that was constantly given to us over and over, for those who are not looking at the screen, it says, new Fed chairman dismisses crypto as no significant risk to the current financial system. This one says the Dutch government reports say crypto risk is low. Russia said, the central bank said from Russia, crypto risk to global finance is small. And this one says the UK crypto exchanges pose low money laundering risk, says Global Watchdog, without filling up the top with thousands of different tabs. You can actually find them from multiple other countries. This was something that also happened in the United States as well. It was the Federal Reserve who also noted that the risk of crypto was relatively low. They also noted, I believe, maybe not Canada, there were a couple of other countries who also came forward and they all stated, bottom line, that crypto posed no actual risk. The prices were too low. The volatility was too high. Nobody would ever want to get into it. Why would anybody in the world be touching cryptocurrencies? The shift that we saw, and I don't know if you noticed it, I felt it in the actual air, is that around October, November of last year, we had information from the New York Stock Exchange, the NASDAQ, and Fidelity that they would be jumping into the cryptocurrency pool. For some reason, cryptocurrency prices didn't actually move. Still not sure why. However, the major part of this is that the large part of the argument was that from the side of the banks kept on coming forward and saying why would anyone use that? There's no risk. The prices aren't going to go that high. Even if the prices do crash, it means nothing to our actual infrastructure, what we have and where things are going. When the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ announced that they were getting into cryptocurrencies, the things that didn't pose a risk to any country around the world, keeping in mind that we also had that, like a meeting? It was live. I watched it, and I think we all spoke about it afterwards. That happened with the United States, where they had certain influential people in the cryptocurrency space, and they were asking them, does Bitcoin pose a risk to the US dollar? I think one or two of them said in the future it could, and the general consensus was that no, this will never cause a risk to the US dollar. This is why this is probably one of the most interesting things in the entire world, because I mentioned before, unless something is a risk to you, you don't mention it. It's not a thing. Like, you aren't probably writing a publication as to why you don't like mosquitoes or why butterflies need to be extinct because they are going to be a risk. Or you don't write a thing talking about, when you walk by a sneaker shop, how the sneakers need to go away because they hurt your feet and therefore it's going to hurt everyone else around the entire world should the sneaker market completely collapse. Very bad choice of examples, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. The fact that this is now being added to the Federal Reserve's stress test scenarios, along with a war with North Korea, should give you a bit of indication. I know that, it's not the nicest idea or scenario to actually have to be able to put out there, but the idea is that crypto is becoming, for lack of a better term, I want to say a risk. Rather, let me see if I can choose my words better. Governments are slowly coming to the idea that what wasn't a risk to them before could certainly become one, especially since the cryptocurrency market is overdue for a bull run, and because major financial entities are getting into cryptocurrencies as well. Some of the main players and the main institutions and governments and companies and stock exchanges who hated cryptocurrency for a very long time are now betting on Bitcoin being a new world currency, or being the money of the internet, meaning whenever you need to do something on the internet, you will simply pay for it with Bitcoin. That's the first thing. And the main shift that I saw when I was first thinking of making this video, or when I ran across that first article, I found a whole bunch of things like this where, governments are talking about pose no risk. And something like, it was almost like a scale that had tilted. And I realized that it happened around the same exact time when the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ came forward and said, hey, we're going to get into crypto. And then you have this. It says, the Central Bank of Kenya joins the conversation on crypto risks. The World Central Bank says that crypto could risk bank runs. China's central bank eyes crypto as a possible yuan risk. Canadian central bank's contingency plan for crypto. Indian government fears that cryptocurrencies could destabilize the rupee. We just had this about a day or two ago. A couple days ago, it says Russian President Putin orders government to adopt crypto regulation by July. I saw this a couple days ago, didn't really add it into a video. The government has pretty much been ordered by July of this year to kind of get it together and get the crypto regulation in order. Same exact thing that we're also seeing with multiple other countries. They're all doing the exact same thing. For some reason in 2018, everyone took their time. I assume that at some point the governments around the world thought that they wouldn't have to give any type of crypto regulation. I think that they were hoping that crypto markets would completely shatter, fall to the ground, Bitcoin would fall to zero. The same exact thing that we saw. We spoke about that at least 45 times last year. Everyone thought it was going to die out and end. Lo and behold, it has not, and it is not going to, because of all the major players who are getting into the cryptocurrency game. So my thing is, I found it quite interesting, especially going from the last one to this one. And this was in May of last year. Seeing the shift very rapidly, because once again, I know a lot of people, and I'm not here to convince you. I'm way beyond that at this point. When Bitcoin does eventually hit $100,000 per coin, I mentioned this in 2017. This is going to be a huge shock for the financial world. And I don't mean like maybe like a negative one, but I mean as far as everyone who doubted Bitcoin is going to kind of zip their lips, nicest way of saying it, at the exact same time, and buy as much Bitcoin as they possibly can. But at this point, we also spoke about this the other day, not financial advice, talking about how eventually buying one Bitcoin or even fractions of Bitcoin will be completely unobtainable for a lot of people. We also have the news from last year, once again referencing it back again, from the Swiss bank, who noted in 2018, they said when Bitcoin's price should, if Bitcoin's price ever hits $250,000, Bitcoin itself alone, not even other cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin alone will be enough to possibly usurp or supplant or push aside the US dollar as a major currency for everyday use. And I know with prices where they are right now, it doesn't seem believable, but once we hit, 100,000 seems believable. And when you hit that number, the amount of people who are going to nosedive into the market is going to be absolutely spectacular. This is why I keep saying, if you're in the market right now, you are very lucky. The point is, I just wanted to kind of, I guess, maybe brush over this, talk about it a little tiny bit. I love the difference not even a year makes, maybe about a good 7, 8, 9 months. There were many other articles. You can definitely find them online, whatever way that you search for articles. So many people kept on saying that crypto were either going to zero, Bitcoin was going to completely die, the market was going nowhere, or that there was just no reason to ever even think about cryptocurrencies being having any type of detrimental effect. And what's going to be very, very interesting is remember I told you when I got into crypto around 2013, 2014, somewhere around that time frame, a lot of the speech was pretty much everything that's happening right now. What we see going on, central bank currencies, so and so and so, this happening, Bitcoin going up and down, having these major pushes down, skyrocketing back up. This was all foretold by other major crypto analysts and major crypto players, and this is why they're kind of still in the game. One of the things that they kept on talking about was that eventually that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are going to absorb gold. And a lot of people keep saying that that's not going to happen, but we've already seen it in slow stints because we know that gold's price has been relatively stagnant, especially, gold may go up by 2% or something like that, or, up and down, but it has remained relatively unmoved since I think 2009 or something like that, when the price went up to around 1,200. I think it's like 1,300 right now. Over the course of a 10-year period, it has barely moved. How do I best say this? I have a feeling that behind the scenes, governments are doing their best to figure out exactly, and I mean, it's so clear. I don't understand how some people can still deny this. Governments are either rushing to buy Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. I know this may, far-fetched, but you have to understand everything is kind of connected. And on top of that as well, when Bitcoin does reach $100,000 and $250,000, even just if it just stays there forever and never goes above $250,000, we're going to have a situation where governments are going to have to openly announce that they are buying Bitcoin and have their own reserve funds to not. If Bitcoin at $3,700 right now, crashing to zero could pose a financial threat, Bitcoin crashing at $20,000 or even, let's say, a good $30,000 with Bitcoin's total market cap over $1 trillion could be detrimental to a huge amount of the world's economy. That's $1 trillion completely wiped out. When we have a situation where Bitcoin is 10 times that, even from the $25,000, $30,000 mark, governments and the World Bank and other things like that are going to have to come forward and announce that they have Bitcoin in reserve in order to ease the tensions in the minds of other people who are also into crypto, like heavy players in world governments. Because if you have a situation where Bitcoin alone collectively is worth $10 trillion and has started to absorb gold markets and everything else, and people are pushing their money desperately into Bitcoin, if Bitcoin fell to zero, the world we'd be eating rocks. I don't know the nicest way of kind of really saying that, but you kind of get exactly where I'm going. I think the next step from here, and I guess is the scariest step if you kind of want to put it into that situation, is when we do pass by 20,000 again, And between the $50,000 to $100,000 mark, when Bitcoin finally passes by $1 trillion on its own, we're going to be, I know we're going to have a lot of articles about it, but as well, pay attention yourself to the news that kind of comes out there and see who starts openly accepting Bitcoin and openly talking about that they're also buying Bitcoin. Because I think we already have, it's clear that banks are buying it. It's clear that institutions have been buying it up for quite a long amount of time. We now have information that universities are doing it, and we have the beginnings of pension funds. The next big step is the open discussion by governments openly that they are either going to be buying it, allocating a small amount of the government's funds or whatever for that year into cryptocurrencies, or that they have been doing it for a number of years. I have a very strong feeling this is going, I think it's going to take a while, but I think we have a good I don't even want to say 5 years. I think it's going to take relatively little time for Bitcoin to pass by 100,000. And this is when we're going to start getting the first murmurs of countries around the world who are going to be announcing. I'm a little hopeful that some will say that they're using Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies as their side currency along with their normal fiat. But I think it's going to be the news that they are buying it up themselves. And when we have news, official news on the television, even if it's just one country, no matter how small or insignificant they might be, that they are buying up Bitcoin, you'd better believe that's the moment where you need to make sure that you actually have some Bitcoin, not financial advice. Because I don't think we're going to have a major player who's going to come forward and say, hey, this is what we have. We're super rich, blah, 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 blah. We've been doing this for quite a long amount of time. I think it's going to be a smaller country first who's going to announce that they're putting or allocating a small amount of their funds, and other smaller countries will start to mimic them. And maybe something as simple as them trying to buy up 5,000, 10,000 Bitcoin. That's going to cause a bull run, not even for the prices, but just for the adoption rate that we're going to have. Because the moment your government says that they're doing something, everyone else in the financial system or even any other type of system begins to follow them. Anyway, you kind of get what I'm saying. It's all very interesting. It's happening. And this is like the first drop in the bucket of it. It's the acceptance that crypto is going to grow, and that Bitcoin crashing in price may be as detrimental as going to war with North Korea. I want you to let that simmer in your mind for a couple of minutes. Think of how detrimental a war would be, and then equate that equally with Bitcoin going to zero. Just think about that. Think of why the U.S. Federal Reserve would waste its time with a stress test talking about Bitcoin potentially going to zero and ruining financial markets on the same exact level as a war. And then think of all the players who are getting into the cryptocurrency space who are going to raise the prices of Bitcoin up. It's all connected. If you look very simply, it's all there. All righty, everyone. That is definitely going to do it for this video. Very interesting times. We live in, if nothing else, we live in some of the most interesting times ever throughout the history of ever. These will be the things that we tell our kids, and they may not believe us. You can point them back to these videos and show them that we lived through all of this insanity. As always, I hope you all had a great day, a great morning, a great afternoon, a great evening, wherever you are. Wherever in this world you might be, I hope it's absolutely fantastic. Thank you all once again for watching and listening. As always, a very special thank you to my Patreon supporters. They are Vlad the Impaler, Gilboa Snake, Rai, Brady Nields, L. Doug, Arthur Yaku, Professor Wally from Gunbot University, Nick Mangielavori, Travis Haynes, Yasha Harari, Anthony Charles, Nick Kanaya, singer-songwriter Mike Savitz, Wise Night Owl, Joey Carafa, Jaleel Dowdy, Crypto Joe, Jim Gardner, Jared Schneider, Jeremy Fox, Amy Starsheen, Richie Rich III, and Jeffrey Ramsey. Thank you all very much for your generosity. And yeah, I'll talk to you all soon. See you.